Yo, G-Man from the G Show. Let's talk about life and what we know. You wanna have a seat with the top dog? Be ready to get down with the real talk. All jokes aside, welcome to the G-Man Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the G-Man Show again. Today, I have a very, very special guest, like I'll always have. Somebody who is really outspoken, somebody who I follow all the time, somebody who made a lot of noise in the last 6 months. Please welcome to the studio, Miss Melissa Lantsman. She's the MP for Thornhill, and she is here at the G-Man Show.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, I know that you grew up in Thornhill.
I did.
Where?
I grew up just around the corner from where we're sitting. I grew up near Brownridge Public School. Parents moved around, never left Thornhill. My father's still living in a condo here, and I won the birth lottery. This is the greatest community to live in. I went to the best schools. I had the best upbringing, and I'm really, really thankful that my parents chose Canada.
Which school? No, we also hope.
So I went to French school. My parents had some foresight, and they said, you live here, you live in Canada, you're going to learn French. And no matter how much I didn't want to learn French, I thought it was the best decision they made. So I went to Frechette, and then I went to a school called Langstaff, which is right outside of Thornhill. We didn't have a French high school, so I continued right on, and I'm still learning every day.
You're fluent in French. Yeah?
I am fluent in French. I speak Russian.
How good is your Russian?
My Russian, you know what? I understand everything, and I answer in English. Typical Canadian kid that was born here, gets spoken at, answer in English.
Can you write and read?
I can read and write, but that's only because I learned in university.
Good for you, a smart one. Listen, everybody has a favorite spot in Thornhill, like restaurants, like bars. What's your favorite spot? My
favorite spot is, look, I grew up here. I grew up eating, sort of the Pickle Barrel and Center Street Deli and Golden Star. But you know what? My favorite spot is, and it's not because it's amazing, but I love Cynthia's, and I loved it because my grandmother loved it, and I loved taking her there, and I have great memories there. And you know what? We've got a ton in this community of good spots where you just see everybody you know, and everybody knows your name, and it's a cool spot.
I'm sure that everybody knows your name now. How is that dealing with that superstar?
Well, it's been a really productive first 6 months, but it's also been a very frustrating 6 months because I don't think the country's going in the right direction. And I think we have a government in Ottawa propped up by an NDP who's letting it do whatever it wants to, and the real, reasonable, rational, conservative voices are just being drowned out.
Yeah, I agree. But we'll get to that.
All right, we'll get there.
Quick question. You're openly gay.
I am.
You're married.
I am.
How is it growing up gay in our community? I mean, our people are, you know how they are. They're very old school. And did you have a hard time growing up?
I was most nervous about this with my grandmother, just coming from a different generation and maybe not having an understanding. And I got pure love and affection back from my own family, from my own community, and I know there was probably some trepidation in parts of our community about my quote unquote lifestyle. But look, I think the more conservatives, the more people get married, the more conservatives we have.
How was your father's reaction?
My father absolutely loves and supports everything I do, and he loves all of his daughters-in-law.
Amazing. From what I'm understanding, before the politics, before this, you worked for Coca-Cola.
I did. I had a number of jobs. I worked. I worked in the private sector, mostly in PR, in communications, in crisis communications, in government relations. So I had a great career before politics. I'm going to have a great career in politics, and I have no idea what I'm going to do after politics if it ends. But I got the good training. I've had really, really good mentors. Coca-Cola was one spot. I've worked for one of our largest banks. I've had clients right across all sectors in the PR world. So I've learned a lot, and I've got a lot to learn.
Oh, I mean, and then you worked for Stephen Harper, one
I
of the
did.
greatest prime ministers of this country.
In my view, the greatest prime minister. I had an amazing run in Ottawa. I went there as a young staffer. It's not the typical career for a Russian Jewish kid growing up in Thornhill. I'm not smart enough to be a doctor, and I said, I want to do politics. Why do you want to do politics? Politics is a hobby. Get a real job. And I went to do an internship, and I ended up staying 10 years in the Harper government. And I worked at Foreign Affairs, and I worked at Finance, and I worked for one of the best prime ministers we've ever had in this country, the one that chose principle over popularity every single time.
Absolutely. Were you devastated when he lost?
Politics is a game that, it's a fluctuating system. People got, people needed something new. They needed a vision, and I think that 6 years of the vision that they wanted and they asked for really didn't come to fruition. Actually, we're 7 years now, so I think it's time for a change in this country. So I'm excited to be part of that next generation and the change that I hope we see soon in this country.
I hope so. It's honestly, it's been devastating and just a disaster. You know what? Especially the last 2.5 years is just bad for everything. But we'll get to that.
It's been frustrating. That's for sure.
You also worked for Doug Ford.
I did.
You ran a campaign for him, right?
I did. I ran what's called a war room. So it's the
war room.
The war room.
What's that?
It's the center of the campaign. It's everything that comes out of the campaign and what the campaign reacts to on a daily basis. So I ran another leadership candidate's sort of communications shop before then, and I was lucky enough to be asked by the now premier to run the war room. I never went to go work in government. Went back to the private sector after that. I've always worked campaigns. I've always been, if I wasn't in politics directly, I was right on the side of it and always a participant because I care. I care about where the country's going, where the province is going, where our municipality is going.
Why Thornhill?
It's where I'm from. I don't know anything else. This is where I grew up. This is where I got my first job. This is where I broke my arm skateboarding or riding a bike. This is my community. And I know it really well, and I was raised by the people in Thornhill. It takes a village to raise kids. You've heard that before, but it really does, particularly with parents who came to this country. We didn't have a lot, but we had a loving home, and I had every opportunity because the people in this community helped bring me up.
Do you choose where you want to be, or you're being set up basically by the?
No, we had a tough run at a nomination. So this is a seat that was held by the great Peter Kent for 12 years, and when he decided to retire, there was a little bit of a competition for who would be the next candidate. So there was an election before the election, and then there was the election, and now we're sitting here.
I can't imagine the feeling that you probably got when you won. How excited were you?
I was pretty excited. You know what? I will say this. I lost my mom in the year before the election, and the only thing that I would have changed is to have her there and witness it, because she always knew that I would do this. She just couldn't wait that long. So I wanted her to see it, and I know she's watching, but it would have been different if she was here. So that's the only thing I would change.
Look, she would have been very, very proud of you.
Yeah.
And we are very proud of you because you're the first one in our community, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing what you're doing. I remember Peter Kent being on the news. I think he was working because I'm here for 30 years, almost 30 years, and I remember him. I think he worked
for sure.
He's a very interesting guy.
So when I was a kid, the one thing I remember is this is the 6 o'clock news, and I'm Peter Kent. When Peter comes to the door, they're like, "Oh, we know you. You've been on the news for 30 years." And then he had a brilliant career in the Harper government. He was a minister. He'd always represented this community well, and he's a true mensch.
Does he come and visit you sometimes?
Absolutely, and I get all kinds of advice, and oftentimes very, very good advice.
I guess in that age, there's not really much to do, and I guess
You know what?
become a business-
He has more experience in his pinky finger than I'm going to have for the next few years. So his advice is good advice, and he's been around the world. He's been in the middle of war zones, and he's been in the middle of really important decisions for our country in government. And he's a good guy to have on your side.
Do you keep contact with? Are you in a good relationship with Doug Ford?
I don't keep close contact with Ford. I've worked with a lot of politicians over the years, and I think some of them I have a lot of contact with. I was lucky enough to have Prime Minister Harper help me out in my campaign, and a lot of the ministers in that former government. My experience really is in the federal realm. But I do, I'm a conservative through and through, and I hope that the Conservatives continue to govern in this province, in this country, and for the future of Canada.
Where do you think Doug Ford went wrong in this pandemic?
Look, I think it's really, really difficult to make decisions on a pandemic, and we don't know anything. And then 2 years later, I think the problem is, and this is throughout all politics, and it's not just Doug Ford, and it's every premier, it's the federal government, is we don't have a way out of this. And it's incredibly frustrating for people over 2 years who did everything right, who followed all of the rules, and still are being punished with restrictions and mandates and things that are actually not solving our COVID problem. Like, we had public health officials make every single decision without any guidance from the business community, without any guidance from mental health professionals, without any guidance for those who have studied things like addiction. We are one-track mind, and we need to get out of this.
Yeah, but I see, when it comes to Doug Ford, because I voted for him, and I really liked his brother, despite of what was happening around him in his personal life, but he was a good mayor. I voted for Doug because I liked his basics, But throughout the pandemic, he had a choice to do the right thing for the people. Look, he destroyed a lot of, and his medical team destroyed not only people with mental disabilities, he destroyed a lot of businesses. He put a lot of people into bankruptcies, debt, things that you can't recover. And as soon as the convoy comes out, all of a sudden Mondays go out.
I don't think I'm here to pass judgment on individual politicians and their decisions. I certainly know where I would stand and what I would have done. And I think that despite the convoy being gone and the trucks are gone, the anger is still there. And we have a very, very divided electorate. We have a very divided country of those who call each other names when they don't agree. That's not who we are. That's not how we solve problems. And you're right. There's a lot of businesses. There's a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, people who have thrown their entire life savings into taking a chance and being entrepreneurs, who were shut out and are out of luck and are out of money. And the problem is we still don't have a plan or the certainty around a plan to actually get out of this. Our restaurants are still empty. Our bar scene is still empty. And I hope that when summer comes, it brings a renewal like it did last summer. But we absolutely cannot go back to what we have been doing.
But lately on the news, they're saying that they might come back with some mandates again.
Look, I'm gonna say this to you. I'm 100% in favor of people being vaccinated, but I'm also a child of immigrants who came to this country to be able to make their own decisions and live their own lives and work hard and get ahead. And we've lost a lot of that. And so any suggestion of any mandates or restrictions, we know that they don't work. We know that things like the passport didn't work. So we need reasonable voices, a lot more of those voices, to be having a conversation about how do we see an end to this. And that's exactly what I'm doing.
You said you would have done things differently. What would you have done?
Well, I think in every situation it would have been different. I think at the very beginning we didn't know a lot about this pandemic, and I think what we did was right. And I think until there was a large number of people vaccinated, that we couldn't have moved on. But beyond that point, when people did everything you asked them to do, when they followed the rules, when they stayed away from each other, when they washed their hands, when they wore a mask, at some point this needs to end. And I think I would have started calling for an end to this long ago, and at least put forward a plan, which, by the way, we still do not have federally. We still have mandates. We still have federal restrictions. And we have a government that is unwilling to even put on the table a plan of how this ends.
Why? Like, I don't understand the logic behind it. Why?
Well, every day that we have something called question period, and that's probably the videos that you've been seeing. But I will tell you this: it's not answer period. There's no answers in that in that 1 hour. And I think it's a way of growing the face of government, growing the intrusion of government in your lives. Remember, when government gets bigger, it's very, very difficult to make smaller. And when you starve out all of the organizations like synagogues and churches and community groups, and you starve their donation channels, and you starve their ability to bring people together, government fills that hole. And that's the big problem, because I wasn't raised by government. I was raised by my community. I was raised by my synagogue. I was raised by charities. I was raised by the groups that I was involved in. I was raised by our Jewish community, and that's all strong when government doesn't do it for you. And I think that's what's being done.
Convoy. How do we get to that point? How did we get to a point where regular people just went out on the street and said, done?
Anger and frustration, and people not listening, and people losing their jobs, and people not being able to get ahead, and people watching their businesses just being shattered by what are nonsense restrictions at this point. And that's anger, and that's people, that's people doing what they do when they're angry. They want government to listen. And instead, we had a government that decided that those people were different. They were white supremacists, they were racists, they were terrorists, they were Nazis. Look, I was on the side of that. How do you have a government that says to a Jewish granddaughter of Holocaust survivors that she stands with Nazis? It's disgusting, and it's shameful.
When I watched that video, I watched it maybe like 5 times. First of all, I couldn't believe that this is the leader of our country who's saying this. Second of all, when you started talking, I felt that emotion. I felt that I would have probably blown up on the guy if he would have, it doesn't click in my mind. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. How do you say this in the parliament where you're supposed to represent our country even in the liberal way, whatever his way is? But how do you say that? And your response was fantastic. It's
anger, and it's frustration, and it's being felt. It's being felt by everyone, and we've got to remember that at the end of the day, again, the convoy's gone, the trucks are gone, and the anger is still there. You should see the emails and sort of what comes through the social media. People are worried. They're worried that the Canada that they came to, Canada that my parents chose, is not going to be the Canada that they wanted. And that's exactly why I'm doing this. Picked a interesting time to get involved.
A lot of pressure. Tell me, what's going on with NDP? How did they end up being hand in hand with the Liberals? I mean, aren't they supposed to be separate group with their own views?
Yeah, I think I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's very frustrating in Ottawa because the Liberals have a dance partner, and they might as well make Mr. Jagmeet Singh, the Deputy Prime Minister, because he supports everything the Liberals do. And I think people are watching, and next time around, I think they're going to suffer with who's going to vote for them. I don't know why would you vote NDP when you can just vote Liberal, and I think that's a problem for this country when we have less and less voices. And when that voice is just the Prime Minister's voice or just the Deputy Prime Minister's voice, I think we lack we lack sort of a proper government policy or just frankly any conversation about freedoms and our ability to make our own choices when you've got the NDP propping up the Liberals against any Conservatives. And I the Bloc has supported us on some of these measures, but we still don't have enough votes. So I don't want to make this a civics lesson, but the situation's not good.
I can certainly see, but at one point I felt like the Conservative Party was just disappeared, and then until you guys come in and kind of like, wow, finally somebody's speaking, finally somebody can answer the questions and ask questions, and I was very, very impressed, and I like the way it goes. Listen, we're Canadians. We're allowed to vote for whoever we want to. If you're liberal, God bless you. You can vote for whoever you want to.
Nobody's perfect, Alex.
Nobody's perfect. I mean, you can do whatever you want to. But there has to be certain common sense in terms of when this government is not doing anything for the people who chose them, instead of just giving them money, we're obviously going to the wrong direction.
Well, the government's going to have to face the electorate again. It's going to have to answer for some of her decisions. And I think for the Conservative Party, we're at a very interesting point in the trajectory. We're in the midst of a new leadership contest. So we've got candidates now putting together their teams. One is out in front. It's the one that I happen to support. And I think that it'll be a good conversation about what the future of the Conservative Party looks like and what the future of Canada looks like.
I mean, Mr. Poirier is great. I mean, the way he talks is like, you're like, okay, everybody please shut up. I want to listen to what this guy says. He's really, really good. I think he'd be a good candidate for leader of a country and probably getting us back to normal.
Well, maybe we get him on the show before.
Oh, I would love to have him on the show. This is going to be one of those. I'll just say, hi, I'm Alex, and I'll just listen to him for like 2.5 hours.
You know what? He's got a good message, and he's got a good message in this sort of time that we're in, and that's a message of freedom. You just want your life back. You want to be able to afford a house. Like, Alex, we live in a community where a house today is somewhere between $1.3 and $1.7 million. How are you going to move out of your parents' basement if you're in your late 20s, even if you have a good job? How are you going to make the decisions that you want to make about what schools to send your kids to and how to raise them? How are you going to afford all of that? Those are the real issues that we got to solve. We got gas prices at almost, we're nearing the $1.80 mark, and we'll be at $2. $2 a liter for gas. Like, I'm not going to advocate that everybody gets that everybody all of a sudden jumps into an electric, but we got to build some pipelines. We've got to use our strategic resources in a way that makes sense. We got to get less dependent on the other side, and we got to make sure that we can sell our gas where people are using it as hostile diplomacy on the other side of the world.
I filled up my car yesterday. $220.
Oh man, what kind of car do you drive?
A truck.
A truck.
$220.
That's wild.
It's insane.
So look, for the average, for the average family that needs to do their groceries and needs to take the kids to hockey and is already, living with a huge mortgage and car loans, and they work harder, they do better, they have good jobs, but they just can't get out of this crippling debt, and they can't get ahead, and they can't move into something nicer and have a little bit more free time with their families. That's what we want in Canada. That's how I grew up.
But somehow they're surviving. Somehow, I guess. Look, a lot of young people made a lot of money on real estate, so a lot of them living off that. But once that's gone, if it crumbles now with the situation the country's going to, I mean, it's
we're in a
justflation.
Yeah, just inflation, that's for sure. But we're in a situation where this country prints more and more money. You can't. Money doesn't grow on trees. You heard that. You can't just print money when we don't have any, and we can't. We can't pump up the economy artificially, so it makes us feel good for a number of months as we emerge from a pandemic. We got to go back to the fundamentals.
What do you think happened to our media? Our media is just out of control. It's like it's like one-sided movie, and that is it.
Yeah,
especially what happened with the convoy. Like,
and we've got to find other ways to reach people, right? We've got to do more of this. We've got to use more of the channels that go direct to voters. If you can't get your message across in a fair way, you go around it, you go over it, and you talk directly to people. The best part of this gig and the best part of everything that I do is the time that I spend here in the community, because it has nothing to do with what is going on in the media. The questions, the answers, the frustrations, the everything that I get from ordinary people at the grocery store next door to here is entirely different than the media narrative. So there is some hope. There's shows like yours, there's shows like the ones that we're putting on, and there's direct contact with voters, the electorate, our constituents, and real people wanting to seek answers. The internet's a big place, and I think people are getting more savvy about how to get their information.
It's very, very unfortunate, because I grew up watching CP24. I mean, I loved all the movies that started at 9. You have these great anchors, and it was always very like pro people, very positive. Now it's like just watching one side movie, and it's like I stopped watching it.
So you got to do this.
Well, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. But now it's very unfair that I have to get information from these unsafe sites.
Yeah.
Because this is just regular people who, without any journalistic knowledge, just put out some news, and you basically, that's all you have. Because, I mean, how else are you going to kind of like balance the information,
Yeah, and it's hard, and people are busy, and frankly, they need, they don't have time to sort of go through sources and decipher which information. But we got to be very careful about who we want censoring our media. It can't be a bunch of bureaucrats at a new department in Ottawa saying you can't see this and you can see this. That's bad news too. So it's up to some of the tech companies to do it a little better. It's about we saw on Twitter the Deputy Prime Minister tweet something, and it was tagged misinformation. So, those who have the time and those who are informed and those who can clean up our content we should empower citizens to do that. But passing laws that would allow some information czar in Ottawa to do it, not the right direction.
Absolutely, it feels like communism. Even like with the things like the Emergency Act and
yeah,
the GoFundMe. I mean, I'm never gonna use GoFundMe, and not only because of what happened with the convoy. It's just unfair. I mean, that you have to stop to use it for any kind of emergency. Then this is designed for people who want to donate for their cause, for their view. I mean, why?
Yeah, look, there's got to be a trust factor that has to exist between citizens and their government, and I think that trust was broken with the Emergencies Act. On the basis of it, on the legal basis of the Emergencies Act, it didn't meet the test of an emergency.
Absolutely.
And I think that blockades, bad news. They're illegal. You can't block bridges. You're hurting our farmers. You're hurting our grocery stores. Blockades are illegal, but the protests, those were clear before the Emergencies Act. This was a political tool to continue to other people that didn't agree with the Liberals or people that didn't agree with the Prime Minister. So what do? You sweep it up under an Emergencies Act, which should not have been used. And if it is ever used in this country, it ought to be a real emergency.
Absolutely. I mean, they gave us such a bad name to our police officers who are doing a really, really good job in general. It took so many years for regular people to be okay and open with the police and being on their side and donating.
Sure.
And now we're just like putting them on the spot for doing their dirty job to just destroy the name. I mean, I don't like what I'm seeing. Because I know certain police officers, and they're really good people. And probably some of them didn't want to be there, but it's their job.
Yeah.
But the guy goes and puts them on the spot where now nobody trusts them, nobody likes them, and these guys who work night then they to protect us are being screamed at and
For sure.
cussed at.
As you know, I voted against the Emergencies Act. I will vote against it every single time if it came up again, because I don't believe that it was an emergency, and I had the opportunity to speak on it. But now we've got to hold the government to account to show us every single document that led to that decision, because we can't take back what I think was an insane decision, but we can make sure that in the future it never happens again. And I think that's one of my jobs in Ottawa.
Do you think you guys are going to hold Justin Trudeau accountable legally or criminally?
Well, we have the opportunity in the Act. We've got a committee now. I think the Liberals are playing games with that committee. That there will be a parliamentary committee and there will be an inquiry. And I think one of our jobs is to make sure. Again, that every single thing, everything that led to that decision, everything that happened during that decision is available to the public, so that they can see that their test for using the Emergencies Act was not met.
Well, so far they got away with everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
give me another 6 months.
It feels like do whatever you want. It feels like a Russian president who's doing whatever the hell he wants. And nothing can be done to him. But that's what it looks to me as a person who was born in the former USSR, and the way I look at things happening right now in Russia, there's no difference. It's just this one doesn't really kill people. He just sends the cops.
Look, I don't want to make comparisons to what is an awful situation, and one that we should care about. Not just my parents happen to be from Odessa, not just because for the Ukrainians, and not just for the Ukrainian people, and not just from those from who live here, who are many of them with Ukrainian ancestry, but it's for democracy and it's for the West, and we should care, and we should care on how Canada sort of fares out in all of this, and we should care that we could be a solution, maybe not in the way that you think. Maybe it's not in the way of boots in the ground or airplanes in the air, because we don't have that equipment. We've been starving our military for years, but we do have oil and gas here. And we know that Russia supplies 40% of Europe's gas. Now we have enough here to make sure that the Russians aren't holding anybody hostage with their energy. We've got to protect our Arctic. We share a border with these guys. People don't realize how close these guys are, and so we've got to invest in NORAD. We've got to join ballistic missile defense. This is a time to think about the future of Canada, our strategic future, and the future of Western democracies in the face of tyranny, because it starts at Russia. And you don't think somebody like China is watching this?
Absolutely. For
Right?
them, they're just watching and see how it's all going to turn. The situation in Ukraine is a disaster. It's a disaster for me because this week was very, very emotional. See, I'm sorry talking about it right away. It's very, very hard, and I'm Russian. It's extremely hard to see that, and I think that the people who are in that position right now in Ukraine, who are fleeing, who are scared, the kids, and who are in bomb shelters, and it's so painful. I went with the Ukrainian when they had downtown walkout to support the Ukrainian. I went there. It was painful, And I said, I made a post about it. I said to my Russian friends, pretty much to everybody, said, you don't have to be Ukrainian to feel the pain. You have to be a human being to understand what's right and what's wrong, and what's happening there is absolutely wrong. And what is Canada doing?
Well, I think I actually, on this point, I agree with what the government has done on this, because, the government's on the right side of this one. And it's on the right side of freedom and democracy and the rule of law. What I do think, though, is that government should do more. And we've been consistently calling that. And if you look at some of my social pages, I've got the opportunity a few times to speak in the House at length about it. And I think it's about what Canada does to help the effort. I think there's a partnership, the NATO partnership in what's going on, and I think they've come around, although it took a little while. I think they should have been 6 months ago where they were on day 7 of this brutal war. But Canada can do more. And it should do more. And we should have sent lethal weapons. We called for that weeks ago. We had a strong relationship, or we've always had a strong relationship with Ukraine, and that was from Prime Minister Harper. And I don't know if you remember, but when he was at the G7, and I think it was in 2014, before when Putin originally went into Crimea, he said, get out of Ukraine, and the mainstream media tore him apart for that.
Yeah.
Right? You're being bombastic. You're being a bully in the Western Alliance. He was right. And we should have heeded that advice a little bit more.
Look, Melissa, we were just threatened with a nuclear weapon by the Russians. How ready are we for anything like this? I mean, with the way they handled COVID, I'm afraid to even think how ready we are in Canada if a disaster like this happens.
Yeah, we're not. We're not ready. That's the honest reality, and we can say that we're ready. But I think you need to look at just even the last 20 years, and it's not as if when the Conservatives were in power that we fixed the military, but we did take our Arctic sovereignty very seriously. But there's no infrastructure up in the Arctic. We're not part of ballistic missile defense. We have outdated NORAD systems. We don't have fighter jets that are able to fly if NATO decided tomorrow that they would take the next step. We need to buy F-35s. This country never did. So we're not ready. There was a sailboat that went through the Northwest Passage, and the government, for whatever reason, couldn't stop. It was a sailboat. You think we're ready? But that's the things that we need to think about. We can build gas pipelines out to the East Coast and supply all of European democracies with Canadian oil and gas. That helps us, that helps them, that helps the world. And security is so intrinsically tied to energy today, and we've just missed the boat on it.
How serious do you think the sanctions are to Russia?
I think the sanctions could look. I think the sanctions to start were a good step. Again, I agree with the government sort of moving. I think we could have moved faster. I think they could be more broad. And sanctions are a difficult topic because, like you said, this isn't about the Russian people. This isn't about starving out the people in Russia. There has been so much bravery in Russia. You saw in St. Petersburg, you saw in Moscow's Red Square, people coming out to protest against an authoritarian regime. You saw it in the streets of every other country in Europe. The world is on the side of Ukraine, and there's so many brave Russians here in our community. Russian speakers like me, who happen to be Ukrainian, whose parents left before it was officially Ukraine. These are the brave people that we have to think about. So the sanctions have to be targeted, and they have to hurt Putin and his posse's personal wealth, because just starving the people of Russia, not the right move.
Do you think it's wise to remove Russian products the way they did from Canada? Was it?
I think it's a step that gets people thinking about what's going on the other side of the world. Maybe when it doesn't affect their lives, but we've bought all these products. People pouring out vodka that they already bought. Like, you're not doing anything, right? You're making an internet movie. You've already paid for it. Somebody already sort of got rich from it. So it's interesting that the whole world now is paying attention to something that's happening on the other side of the world. But we've got to make sure that our sanctions, again, are targeted, and they hit Putin, and they hit his friends, and they hit their personal wealth, because I think that's when we'll see sort of some movement. This is Putin's war, not the war of the Russian people.
I absolutely agree. Look, there's a lot of Russian people that I know and I speak to, and they're initially they were oblivious, because they don't get no information from them. For them, this is interesting. They think that Ukraine started a war with Russia in Ukraine.
Look, this is one of the things we've called on it. The government should immediately direct the CRTC to get RT right off the airwaves. Like, this is where it's coming from, right? This is the misinformation. But there are lots of Russians in this community that know exactly what's happening right now, and they're ashamed of it. And we need more of that bravery to say this isn't right. Putting women and children and the elderly into a war zone, not of their own making, an egregious act against international law. Like, you saw the images where they wrote the kids' blood types on their shirts. Can you imagine sending your kids to school here, writing their blood types on their shirts just in case something happened? You saw the bombs on orphanages. You saw, the babushkas not knowing what to do with themselves. Some took up guns, some cooked a little bit more, and nobody knows how to get out of there.
I don't know how it will end. I hope it will end soon, and there will never be peace. Now it's very hard to have peace in this kind of situation. I absolutely understand the Ukrainian community to be upset with the Russians, but I also want to say that there's a lot of problem boiling here in Toronto, especially in this area between the Russians and Ukraine. I'm feeling it. I'm seeing some stuff online, and I heard there was a fight in some Russian store. I heard somebody walked into a Russian grocery store and just dropped a bunch of products and spilled ketchup on it. My look is this. I mean, we have to at least keep peace here.
Absolutely.
It's our responsibility, your responsibility, mine as a speaker responsibility,
Absolutely.
to make sure that at least here we don't lose our humanity, and at least here we can give a hand, ask if they need help. I called all my friends who are Ukrainian. I message everybody who I can, who I know personally. If they need help, I'll do whatever needs to be done. It's very important. And for some reason, I think, don't know why, but for some reason, a lot of them are scared to voice. A lot of them are scared to say it. And it's very, very unfortunate for me to see this. And actually, last week, when this whole thing started, I have a friend called me up, and he has a bar, and he did a Russian night, and somebody called him and said, "Why are you playing Russian music?" And I'm like, well, what else we're going to play? I mean, but it's just, do you see my point, like where it's going? It's just very
absolutely.
Unfair for the people like me who are with the Ukrainians and support them and absolutely against the war that is happening there. But we're still being kind of like, you're Russian.
Yeah, look, if you tune in, if you listen to my remarks, I talked a little bit about this in the House, and I think that we've always got to tip our hats to those who are brave and those who have the courage to speak out about something that their country is doing. And you're absolutely right that we've got to keep the humanity going here, and we've seen this in other conflicts where there's diaspora communities in Canada. And look, this is the best country in the world. I certainly think so. And one of the reasons that it's the best country in the world is that we can live side by side with our neighbors when we agree and when we disagree.
I just hope that they're bringing a lot of refugees here. I just hope it's not going to create any problem for the future. Because the people that are going to be coming here, and God bless them, I want them here because they shouldn't be in that war scene. They're going to bring a lot of emotion here, and I just hope there's going to be some sort of a program made by the government to slow down the emotions and to open their eyes that there's good people living here,
For sure.
Good Russian.
Look, we've got a history of building this country through immigration, and people have left situations, akin, and they've left war zones, they've left genocides, they've and every Ukrainian immigration in this country has been more successful than the last, and we have a huge diaspora here. So I'm looking forward to a government that's going to move a little bit faster. We lost our opportunity with those in Afghanistan who helped us, those who were by our side for 20 years helping Canadian journalists, and we said no. That this country, we don't have enough space for you, or we can't get this process fast enough. And there are people burning books, school books, and girls not going to school anymore. Everything that we built in Afghanistan gone in a month. So we have an opportunity here to help people, even with a temporary visa, travel visa, stop the travel visas so that they can come here, that they can spend time with their families, that they can get refuge from war zone. And then if some of them want to go back, which I assume that many of them will, because it's a new nascent democracy where there's a Western type lifestyle. I think lots of them are going to want to go back, but we've got to be a light in a world of darkness that Canada could be, and we've got to offer them a path to permanent residency here, and we've got to do it faster so we don't lose the opportunity.
They rejected recently the visa.
So they're not doing travel. They're not dropping the restriction on travel visas, and we've been calling for it, and I think they should. And they've opened up a couple of different streams, but it's been difficult. Something that our office has been dealing with, as you know, in our community, there is lots of people with families still there, grandmothers, parents that are still there that are trying to find them a way out. So that's one of the things that a federal MP helps with.
Are we ready to accept so many refugees? Like, are we capable of doing so?
We certainly have housing issues, and we certainly have we certainly have a cost of living crisis happening. But the only way we're going to grow our country is was with immigration, and we can step up and be a light in the darkness in a war zone for the Ukrainian people. We have to. That's our job. That's how we're not from here. This is our country now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I love this country. I just want it to go the right direction. And especially I want it because of the newcomers. I don't want them to see just only that side.
Yeah.
I want them to see there's two sides. It's like you can't have one king there all the time. There has to be always a change in order for a person to understand and to balance things around. And what I see right now with the Liberals, they're like stuck there and
we need a vision for this country.
We need a vision, and hopefully somebody is. Let me ask you a question. There was a lady there. Her name is Yara Sack, an MP. She said honking while on convoy was equivalent to SS. Honk Hitler. I mean, this is
Yeah, I'm not going to use the platform to disparage other MPs, but I think when you do things like that, and when you put out information, misinformation like that, you set the clock back on what real extremism is, 100 years. So when we talk about extremist elements that exist in society, and they do, we got to be serious about it. We can't make things up. And that's a dangerous game that a politician could play. So I'm not going to be in the game of calling anybody who disagrees with me a Nazi or attributing things, to a convoy that aren't true and aren't there. We got enough problems, and we don't have any powerful deterrents to stop people from actually waving a swastika or making gestures in a school or putting swastikas on playgrounds or community center buildings. We just have politicians that say this is crazy, this I dismay this, I'm very angry about it, but we don't actually have the ability to prosecute people to not do it again. So we can have politicians who make up things, or we can have politicians who are actually going to do something about anti-Semitism, and I want to be on this side, not this side.
From what I understand, she's Jewish, so that was interesting to me for somebody to say that. But I also notice right now there's a lot of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Man, it's vodka. in our area, a lot. And the news are like, this never happened before. Why is this so on the rise?
It's on the rise. It's been on the rise, and for the exact reason that there's nothing stopping anybody from doing it. When there's not a prosecution of hate crimes. Nobody ever goes to jail for drawing a swastika in the sand or putting spray paint on a building. We see swastika flags in Palestinian protests all the time. We see Hezbollah flags in that's a terrorist organization named by this country in marches in Montreal. And we see politicians saying that's terrible. But we don't have very many tools for prosecutors to be able to actually throw people away for it, or for police to be able to arrest somebody and that actually have teeth in making sure that it doesn't happen again. So who's responsible for that? Well, we got to make better laws.
Absolutely. I mean, I still don't understand how the hell in Parliament Hill these guys walked around with swastikas, nobody, nothing.
Yeah, look, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable on Parliament Hill. It's unacceptable in the streets of downtown Toronto. It's unacceptable in the parks right here in Thornhill. And it's unacceptable in the streets of Montreal. And if we can agree that it's unacceptable, then let's do something about it.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, 2 years in the pandemic, why did it take so long for the Conservative Party to start actually pushing for the politicians to get rid of this mandate? Why did it have to take 2 years for it to kind of like, okay, we need to end this?
Yeah, look, I don't have an answer to that question, but I do know that I've been here for 6 months, so I'm one of the newly elected ones, and I think that I've been rather consistent, the entire time. Again, I'm not against the vaccines and everything that we had to do at a certain time. What I think doesn't make sense anymore is the time that we're in. Like, how is science different in Europe or in the US than it is here? Like, if we are talking about, well, the science says, how is it so different in other parts of the world? All you got to do is get on a plane after being, tested 1,000 times. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but after a testing regimen that doesn't need to be there, to go to somewhere else and see that people are living their lives. And so we've got to ask ourselves, like, why are we still here? And so, I mean, some of it is a product of time, and some of it is a product of having political courage to do the thing that maybe is not the most popular thing.
I came back from Mexico. I went for my birthday to Mexico. I came back from Mexico. So in Mexico, I had to do a COVID test. Mm-hmm. Cost $150 US to do a COVID test. I landed here. I had to do another COVID test.
Yeah. We've called for the dropping of all testing. The airlines have called for the dropping. The doctors, the experts, the ones that are giving the government the information, have all called for an end to a testing regime. So my question to the government is, who are they listening to? If it's public health officials, if it's doctors, if it's the tourism industry, if it's the airline industry, if it's conservative politicians, and everybody says that we're done with testing, and even some of their own voters say that this doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore, who are they listening to?
And they haven't built a better healthcare either. I mean, nothing changed. I had a podcast with Roman Barbara and said the same thing. Like, we're still like 20 years ago, where you still go to an emergency, you still wait 10 hours to get checked in, and in 2 years, you're still in emergency, and you're still waiting 10 hours to get in. I mean...
Yeah, look, hallway healthcare isn't a term that is new, and while my level of government doesn't have sort of a direct interaction with how we fund healthcare, it does come from a funding formula that exists. Now, we should increase that funding formula, and there frankly should probably be some levers on how that money is spent, although there is a bit of a constitutional division of powers issue in that. We can give all the money, but the province, who is closer to people, decides how it's spent. So I think, the next election campaign for the province is around the corner, and I think we have to ask ourselves some hard questions about, we weren't ready for this one. Are we going to be ready for the next one? And we should have probably asked ourselves some questions the first time SARS was here.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody already had COVID. I think I had COVID like 3 times already.
Do you have it 3 times?
Oh,
how was it?
The first one was the first one was rough. Yeah. The second was the third one was like throat pain. That's it. That's all it was. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, look, there's some people that are more susceptible, and we've got to protect those people. I got to protect somebody like my father, who's edging towards 75, who's not exactly healthy, but we could have done things differently by protecting those who are vulnerable and allowing, those who, by and large, with this variant, have fared pretty well. Nobody got really, there's not a lot of people who got really sick. Our hospital numbers are down. Our death rate is down. We got to move on.
Absolutely. What's next for Melissa? Melissa, where do you want to go?
Well, Melissa is
I know you went skating today.
Yeah, I did go skating today. We had a great event. We do community events all the time, and part of the problem with COVID is that there isn't a lot of community events going on. So we create our own. So we were down at Rosemount Arena, which is not too far from here, and had a good skate, and we'll do it again. And we have passport clinics, and I like that stuff. I liked talking to people in the community because it reminds me why I'm there and who sent me there and why they sent me there.
What's a passport clinic?
Oh, we just help people with their passports when they find. Oh, no, not the vaccine passports, just the regular passports, the one that lets you go on the airplane and lets you go to Florida and Mexico and wherever you want to go to get your life back.
For a second, I'm gonna get a lot of messages.
No, not a. Thankfully, those are gone in the province of Ontario. But what's next? I've got a lot to learn. I'm young in my political career. I'm looking forward to having a conversation about where the Conservative Party goes in the next leadership, and who knows? Stay tuned.
Oh, I will. I'm following you everywhere. I think the whole community is following you everywhere.
Amazing.
Melissa, thank you very much for taking the time and coming here. It was a great pleasure. You're doing a fantastic job. Continue voicing it. Continue screaming, and passing the message for us, to the higher power.
For sure. Thank you for your support, and thank you for having me. And hopefully we can get some follows out of this, and we'll do this again in a not so distant future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yo, G-Man from the G Show. Let's talk about life and what we know. You wanna have a seat with the top dog? Be ready to get down with the real talk. All jokes aside, welcome to the G-Man Show.